Okay, good stuff. Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you all with us today. As we all know, as people that work in hotels and in the hospitality industry, ITB was one of the most anticipated events of probably since the pandemic hit us. Three ITBs were cancelled, which basically means that it was a 4-year absence. So a lot has happened in those 4 years. And to share their experience of ITB 2023 and what they learned and give us a sense of what's hot and what's not, we've got an exceptional panel of hospitality leaders. So I'm going to get them to introduce themselves. We'll kick off with Clemens from SiteMinder, followed by Jos, then followed by Matt from Mews and Anna from Bookboost. So Clemens, kick off, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Clemens from SiteMinder. Been there for a while now. Earlier based in London, now moved to Berlin to open our local office. Regional sales director for EMEA, and super excited to be here today.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so my name is Jos Schaap. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Roomdex. Roomdex is a company that focuses on automated upselling, including enterprise-based selling. We connect to multiple PMS systems. Prior to Roomdex, I founded the company called Stay in Touch, which is a PMS. Prior to Stay in Touch, I spent 18 years at Micros, responsible for the development and engineering teams of the famous Opera PMS.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm Dutch as well originally, but I've been living abroad for 20 years, and I joined Mews 10 years ago, and I'm the CEO of that company, PMS. And I came out of hotels where I have definitely felt the pain of the legacy, and that's where the origin story of Mews came out of, that we felt we needed to really go into the cloud and open up that whole network of integrations. And we're now 10 years in across 70 countries with about 3,500 hotels.
Fantastic. And then last not least, Anna.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael. Ladies first didn't fully work this time, but doesn't matter. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Anna Randon. I work at the Bookboost. The Bookboost is a customer experience platform to improve the guest experience, and we're specifically developed for the hospitality industry.
Fantastic, good stuff. Well, I'm going to open up the questions. I'm going to direct them first to Matthias and Clemens, and then I'll move on to Anna and Jos. But the question I have to kick things off is, both Clemens and Matt were at ITB 2019, and they were both obviously at ITB 2023. Now, one of the big things that I noticed in 2023 was the color of the boiler suits that the Mews guys were wearing, which was fantastic. But Matt and Clemens, what for you were the stark differences between 2019 and 2023?
Pink is my color is the one thing that I realized that I didn't know pre-ITB. It's definitely my color, I've decided, but I've been coming to ITB for, I don't know, 10 years probably straight. And this was the first week that I've spent in Germany and at ITB where I didn't have to use cash to pay for things, which actually shows tremendous progress during COVID of payment acceleration and payment automation and integration. And I think it seems like a small thing, but it's actually huge because Germany has been one of their slower markets to adopt things like innovative payments. And for us to just get through a week without ever having to pull out our cash was one of the biggest things that I realized. I think a lot of people had picked up on AI, of course, like we're all living through ChatGPT and the excitement of it. But I think there's still a sense of, well, what do we do with it in our space? Like you're now starting to see AI trickle into some of the office applications, and it's interesting to see. But I'd be really curious to see where in a year's time, when we're now excited about it, but what will change in a year's time, and things like Bookboost, you're directly connected with guests, and how can you use AI to change that experience, because it has been clunky up until this point. So I think those are probably my biggest observations that I walked away with.
Yeah, fantastic. Clemens, how about you?
Yeah, maybe just to add to that. So I think people were starving after 4 years going back to that event. It was a huge relief, first of all, to basically be back, see a lot of familiar faces. I think it was great to see a lot of partners there, a lot of familiar companies. So somehow most of us somehow go through these previous dry years. I think main topics, Mattis already mentioned them. So it's all still out there. There's a lot that happened. If you look at hotel distribution, I think in specific direct booking, so hoteliers were really using that time to catch up. There's so much that happened in that space where now just the direct booking experience got a lot better over those years. Meta got an even bigger topic. It was super refreshing to talk to those people. By 2019, it was just normal to come there every year. But I think the special thing this year was really like also a sense of appreciation that this event is not always forgiven. And yeah, be back, spending some time with familiar faces, meeting new partners. I think yeah, there was a level of gratefulness for that you could really sense in those halls this year.
Yeah, fantastic. You know, one of the things I picked up on was that the tech halls were as busy as they've ever been. I think in some of the other shows I've been to, for some reason, and I don't quite know what it is, but tech hadn't sort of had the presence that it had in previous years, where at ITB it was really strong, which was really encouraging. And not only was the presence strong, but the activity around the tech halls was really, really vibrant.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, what's interesting then is that it wasn't in the other halls. And I think that was quite eye-opening. As I walked through the rest, it's like, oh, it's not like in our hall where it's buzzing and it's exciting. And obviously still, I think about a third of the halls were not occupied this year, whereas usually every single hall is taken. So I'm hoping that next year we get a little bit more of that excitement back from a B2C market that also joins.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It was quite strange because ITB was always about destinations and stuff like that. And definitely the footfall in those halls was not what it was in previous years. Yeah, great. Yeah. So moving on to Jos, you're an ITB virgin, or maybe not, I'm not sure. You weren't there in 2019, but you. What was your biggest takeaway having not been there in 2019 and seeing it with fresh eyes?
Actually, I was a virgin there. Yeah, it's the first time I went to ITB. I'm not sure why I never went before. Can't really remember. But yeah, I kind of wanted just to hook on what Matt said about the cash payment. That was one of my frustrations going to Germany earlier on in the years. I actually lived in Germany, and I thought to what Matt said, I can pay everything with my credit card now. But as soon as I landed and checked into the hotel, next door I went to a local coffee shop and I had to pay cash. And the reason why I'm saying that right now is that I did that, of course, because I wanted my coffee. And the second day I went back with some cash to buy another coffee. And I always buy a latte with an extra shot. Third day I go there, and as the minute I walk in, the barista says to me, "Would you like a latte with an extra shot?" In other words, he recognized exactly what I wanted after 3 days going there. And we're going to talk a lot about personalization today, and technology can help with that. But I think to really make it work, you still need sharp and engaged employees and people in our case behind the front desk being alert to what's being asked. So having said that, kind of what's my biggest takeaway? I think there was a lot of buzz. There's still a lot of interest in traveling. There's a lot of people that still need to meet. Of course, there's a lot of articles about no more office spaces, no more meetings, and all that kind of stuff. But I think ITB kind of confirmed that does not go away. In fact, it probably will come back stronger as we grow. I also went to ATM and WTM over the last 12 months, which were very, very busy. So people will want to meet together and they will want to understand each other face to face rather than just over Zoom. As I think that's one of my biggest takeaways. The other one I think is that hotels are looking to find ways to automate parts of their processes or all of their processes more and more. I don't think that's new. I think that's, there's a lot of internet conversations about that. But I think what in the conversations we had, or I had with some of these hoteliers and also vendors, there seems to be the need to want to do it all in one go. And if you kind of aim high, in other words, if you want to automate the entire hotel in one go, it also creates a bottleneck or a kind of a roadblock because it makes it very difficult to do that. Of course, it's a very big task to completely overhaul the entire process that you have in a hotel. So I kind of I think my takeaway would be really around, start kind of, take it easy and look at little things that you can automate. On the technology floor that was at ITB, there were many applications, such as the ones here on our call, Mews, Bookboost, ourselves at Roomdex and SiteMinder, that can help automate certain parts of your processes. And rather than trying to take them all in one go, pick one that really can help you moving forward. I think that's probably one of my biggest things. We also had a lot of interest, and I'm a little selfish here. We talked and released our new feature called attribute-based selling or upselling. In our case, that draw a lot of attention just to understand what it really is. Now that it's been the buzz around that has been going on for many years, but now that it's really there, people really want to understand what it is and how it works. So I think there's a lot of interest in changing to new technology. The other thing that I do notice is that people are still reluctant to make those changes, and I think we need to find ways to coach hotels and hoteliers in a direction to help them with that along the way.
And
so
actually, I was going to one of the other questions I was going to ask later on to you, but we may as well hit it now that you've mentioned that, is exactly on that point, is how do you help hotels, or how would you advise a hotel on how to prioritize what tech to invest when? What do they prioritize, and when there's so much out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there, and when I travel a lot, I go to a lot of hotels on a very regular basis. Very few hotels offer still mobile check-in and check-out. Very few hotels offer the tools that Bookboost offers around guest engagement prior to arrival, that kind of stuff. It really helps. Like the hotel that I stayed in at Berlin, the Hotel Odeberg, I think is a Mews hotel that did offer a mobile check-in and mobile check-out. And that just, in Germany, you do have an overhead of administration requirements at check-in. All of that kind of fades away if you provide mobile check-in to your hotel guest, because then the guest can do that on his or her phone, him or herself, prior to arrival. And they'll be happy to do that because you don't have to wait in line and fill in a manual form. And the only thing left to do then is, provide the guest with a key at check-in and maybe verify quickly the ID, which is a lot less effort than typing it all or writing it all down first. So I think starting with small things that can really remove admin processes away from the process today. I think you should definitely look at what little thing can I start that reduces my cost, i.e. it removes a process or automates a process, or what little thing can I start that enables me to generate more revenue in a small incrementals, rather than looking for, again, the whole big thing. So I think, just look for small increments that can help. And, some of the applications on this call are fairly small. I mean, Mews is obviously a larger effort to replace, but even that being in the cloud today, and I don't want to take your words away, Matt, I think the applications being in the cloud today make transitions and trials a lot easier than they ever used to be. So with travel being, full force back, and people really looking to have a better experience and talk about personalization, just as the barista gave me at that little coffee shop around the corner, changing and switching technology is much easier now than it used to be.
Cool. And we'll dig into these aspects as we go through the call. But before we do, Anna, what was your big takeaway? Just give you a chance to kind of share your observations from ITB.
Thank you, Michael. A few observations and reflections from ITB. It was incredibly intense, at the same time immensely inspiring, at least in the tech hall, as we agreed upon earlier. But I also think to finally reunite the industry with its people, that was great. And the days at ITB felt like a melting pot of great energy, shared ideas, and valuable, meaningful connections. But on a more serious note, we all know that the industry is going through a transformation. And despite all the disruption and uncertainty, we still want great experiences. We buy on feelings, not attributes, and we would like to create long-lasting memories. And to experience this at ITB was powerful, but to lead the transformation forward will become magical.
Fantastic, nice, inspiring optimism there. I'm going to ask Clemens how he feels the mood of hoteliers is. Are they optimistic about the future? But feel free, anyone, to chip in, because I think we've all got a view on this, having spoken to many of our customers over the last few weeks and months. So Clemens, do you get a general sense that hoteliers in particular, are optimistic about the future, or do you think the issues still weigh heavily on their shoulders and the uncertainty?
So what we see is that the confidence is growing. I would almost say day for day. Hoteliers generally optimistic when their guests are optimistic, which in turn is visible in their booking behavior. And we can also see this really in our data, right? So for example, in our hotel booking trends that we just released in February, we can see that the booking, the global average of bookings has now reached 106% of 2019 levels. So that's booking volume compared to the booking volumes of pre-COVID levels. So that indicates growth since pre-COVID, which is generally like a very healthy sign. We also see that the average cost of a hotel room has grown. If you look at it globally, from $143 US in 2021 to $170 to last year. So we are now about 20% above the 2019 average. Interestingly, July was the most profitable month for the most of the Northern Hemisphere properties, December for the Southern Hemisphere. But you can also see it on other key metrics, right? We can see that the booking window, so the lead time to booking, is widening. So we're now at roughly 30 days. That was 10 days more than last year. We are still not where we were in 2019, where we had like 36 days, but we can see directly the direction this is going. Another good sign with cancellations. Cancellations are globally down to roughly 20%. That's 5% less than last year, and way down 32% from 2020. So also there you can see that the confidence is coming back. And last but not least, the optimism with travelers themselves, right? So there is such a strong urge to travel, regardless of threats out there. Yeah, we know there's like an insane amount of concerns, of inflations, of global crisis. People want to get out. They actually need this for their physical well-being. So when you ask, and we surveyed that in another study where we just asked 8,000 travelers about their travel preferences and what are they planning to do. They say, look, if they have a trip pre-planned, 90% are happier and look more forward to the future than if they are not. It's just extremely important for their mental health. And I think that's like a really, really strong signal of what a relevance travel plays, and also should give us here comfort that it will always bounce back. Yeah, and never mind the resistances, the concerns out there, there's a strong sense of optimism.
Fantastic. So there's a strong, the market seems to be very positive and optimistic, and the outlook looks positive. But we know that this is, with a backdrop of a lot of uncertainty. Obviously, we just in recent days had the banking, I won't call it a crisis, but just a bit of a, if things that happened there that we weren't expecting, and obviously the war in Ukraine, and so the backdrop is pretty grey. Matt, how do you feel hotels are dealing with these challenges, and what really keeps them up, and how's this influencing their decisions to invest in technology?
Like, I agree with what Clemens says. Like, we're seeing the same occupancies, we're seeing significantly higher rates, but we're also seeing across our portfolio, because as the PMS, you have all the employees as in the database, and we see that the same hotels run with about 30% less staff, which is terrifying if you think that they're serving the same amount of guests who are paying more for these hotels, but you're giving them less service. And then that trickles down to the reviews that they're leaving. And we're specifically seeing this impact in the 3-star segment, where these customers are just not really happy with what they're getting out of cleanliness in the room, for example. And we have actually, like, I think when we went into COVID, we thought, God, no one's going to buy software at this point. They're just going to be in survival mode. But after a few months, we saw, no, actually they are. Like the ones that are empty, they're like, shit, now is the time to actually think about innovating so that we're ready for the future. And we've actually had a fantastic year of growth, 2 years of growth after the initial panic that we saw. And those hotels are now testing out lots of innovations. And I would love what Josh was saying, do small things, right? It isn't a complete overhaul of everything that you do at the hotel, because you're in the cloud. There's an API and there's hundreds of integrations, and you literally get to switch it on, test it for 30 days, 60 days. If you don't like it, you move on to the next thing. And there's so much you can do, right? So it's really figuring out where the highest labor that you're having, because that is a thing that everyone's tired of speaking about, but it's the reality of life. There just isn't enough labor to support these hotels. So figure out where are your highest labor costs, and then look in the app stores, like what are the apps that can really help supply or basically help innovate and automate some of those labor things. And there's some really great solutions out there. And we partnered up, for example, with a charity fund, Hotels for Trees. So if you skip housekeeping of your room, the hotel will donate €5, but you don't have to have the labor on staff, and you plant a tree at the same time. So it's one of those integrations that we added that we just absolutely loved. And it really helps this labor shortage, for example. And that's an easy thing to do, which instantly helps support the labor shortage that you experience, but also give back in some sense. But like little innovate. I actually, in preparation for this, I said there's still a lack of innovation, and it's because they're buying something in the cloud and then they run it like it's on-prem, and they're running it like you're still in the 1990s. But you shouldn't. You should start to test it. It's exciting. Like, it doesn't cost much to switch on something. It's just don't switch on 20 things at the same time, because then you get loaded with the costs. Figure out what's the thing that you need at your hotel. And then you just get there through trial and error, and it's okay if you pick something that doesn't work for you. Okay, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and I'll address everyone, because I think we probably all got a view on this, but it's all very well testing little bits here and there, but I presume that they do need a longer term vision for what they're trying to achieve. You know, it's no good just taking little bits of technology in isolation if you don't have a view of what the complete jigsaw looks like.
Yeah. Like, I always go back to the budget. Like, everything starts with a financial plan, and actually understand how yours compares to someone else in the destination that you look up to. And like, a great plan starts with finances and understanding your revenues and understanding your costs. And then you can very quickly see where the biggest opportunity is. And then you start digging in that area. And basically start mapping them out, and what are the things you can do with little effort that have the most impact. And it does take a few hours for you to sit down, but it's totally worth doing that exercise.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's the same thing with like with software. You know, we develop software, and we used to do that 15, 20 years ago in what they call a waterfall concept, whereby you once a year or twice a year you release a whole bunch of things that you hope will then work. And not all work, as we learned over the years. But today we develop software that is very incremental. It's called Agile. And so every 1 or 2 weeks, something new goes out. And sometimes we even, or most vendors, put something out that they're not sure if it will work, but it's so small and it doesn't cost that much if they have to replace or change it down the road again. And I think the same concept you can apply in hotel. Like if Matt says it starts with the finance plan, that's definitely an important part. But within that, you can say, okay, we're going to talk today about personalization, probably along the line. You know, if the goal of the hotel is to improve guest service and reduce labor costs, then that's 2 goals. And with that, you can find easily a simple solution that can either help with more revenue or reduce your cost. If you simply take, okay, what are the labor steps I need to take to check in a guest or to clean a room, and which ones of those could I automate or remove? And then when you find, you know, when you basically map out those little steps, you can look for solutions that can help with those things. I think that's just a simple way of approaching it, and then keep your end goal of, you know, better guest service or less labor, you know, in place, and then you'll get to where you want.
Yeah, it's great. And it's interesting that sort of the crisis has forced this acceptance in the hotel industry that technology can actually solve these problems make you more efficient as an operation. But Anna, I'm curious to know from your personal perspective where you think the most impactful deployment of technology could be for a hotel. And we've spoken a lot about the guest engagement, and I'm guessing from a Bookboost perspective, I mean, that's where you would think that they can achieve the biggest impact in terms of guest experience and also reduction in costs.
Yeah, definitely, Michael. Thanks a lot for the question. And I will also elaborate a little bit on your points, Matt and Josh, that you just shared with us. Of course, it's not black or white, but I think it makes sense to argue like this. Use technology to empower people rather than replacing them. It's like working smarter instead of harder. And in general, time-intensive, repetitive, and low-value added tasks should be replaced by technology. That could be, for example, booking adjustments, pre-arrival communication, responding to FAQs, and so on. By implementing technology to support and empower your organization, you will free up time that could be better used in other situations and areas. Everyone then asks, yeah, but how do you do it? I recommend everyone to unlock the power of simplicity. It's not rocket science. And I can actually say that because I come from the industry. I think always think about what you would like to achieve and closely integrate the guest perspective to it. Make it easy to be a guest, but also make it easy to be an employee. Start from where you stand, like you shared, Matt. Take one step at a time, and improvements will start to show.
And I suppose underlying all of this is interconnectivity, and maybe Matt, you can jump in here, because I think Mews has got your marketplace, and which allows hoteliers to kind of do exactly what Anna is saying. In fact, support what all of you are saying is try different technologies, and if they work, continue, grow them, expand them. If they don't, swap them out with something that might be more appropriate. How's that interconnectivity between different applications improved the ability for hotels to innovate and adopt new systems?
Like I think it's transformed it. And I can see it in hotels who are now, like an average hotel on Mews, I think has 5 or 6 integrations running, but the good ones, the ones that are really outperforming, are looking at 12 to 15 integrations that they have running across their business to automate some of these manual repetitive tasks that you were talking about. And it's just how much do you want to automate? And we at Mews talk about user disengagement. I think that's like TikTok and Instagram, their purpose is to lock you in on that app and to never have you leave that application. Whereas it should be our purpose to make sure that hotel users are using our systems as little as possible so that they get to spend time with the guests instead. So we've started measuring how much time users actually spend in our system so that we can improve on some of those golden tasks that we have in our system. And some of the best impact we see in hotels that have lots of integrations, because these integrations, they have sent data up and down so that you never have to go and verify to systems whether the housekeeping app has correctly uploaded the right room numbers to be cleaned and whether the guest has checked out of that room at that particular time. And that's where you need a two-way API. And I'd say, like, when I started this business, I was a hotelier, right? I have never seen technology, I've built technology or read an API. And I would encourage anyone to actually find the open API of your PMS and just read it. You don't have to be a developer to understand what you can do with it. There's use cases written into these API documentations. And it's actually really interesting because you can see what kind of data the PMS could send out to systems or get pulled in. And if you start to invest, I'd say start with reading the API. And some of the best hoteliers that we have, for example, Claudia Generator, they're one of our customers. She always talks about, adding more API endpoints so that she can extend some of the use cases that she's built with her developers. And they have actual developers on staff. They don't have the traditional IT departments. They have invested in real developers so that when you get an idea, you don't have to rely on third parties all the time. You can actually do some of these things yourself in-house as well. But I think the verbiage using API in your regular language has to be something that hoteliers have to start learning, because it's the tool to unlocking some of the power of integrations.
That's amazing. Really interesting that they are getting developers rather than IT as part of their core resources, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I mean, you're a third-party application. And you developed, as you mentioned in the introduction, attribute-based selling, which is a new concept, and I'm sure lots of legacy technology doesn't support the ability to sell attributes. So, what was your experience like working with different platforms in trying to bring to the market attribute-based selling capabilities?
I mean, so attribute-based selling has been the thoughts about it have been around for a long time. I think 5 or 6 or 7 years, maybe even people are trying to build it. But so before I go there, I kind of want to go back to the integrations a little bit, because that's still a big burden for companies like mine and Bookboost and SiteMinder. Or SiteMinder has been around, has built all of them throughout the years, I guess. But I've come from the PMS world, and I guess I'm guilty to building some of these closed systems, such as Opera, years ago. But also, if I want to just give a bit of benefit to myself, there 15 years ago, those technologies that are available today were not available. Now they are. And what surprises me in the last 2 years that we're trying to bring Roomdex to the market is that there's still a lot of legacy PMS out there, which has this enclosed or closed-in way of a vendor being able to connect to it. We're working with one large vendor, or PMS vendor right now. I'm not going to mention the name. It's just a pain to get connected into. And with the newer ones, such as Mews, Stay in Touch, Apaleo, and a bunch of the other ones, it's just very automatic. It takes time. You still have to, write the interface and write the APIs. It takes some effort, but once it's done, it's done. There is no fees. Everybody can just do what they need to do, and it's just so much easier to get connected. So I think one thing, and I mentioned earlier, small incremental steps. This would be a big step. I think hotels need to make sure they're on a PMS that enables them to innovate and move forward, i.e. a cloud PMS with an open API structure. Nothing new, just sending it out as a reminder, because most of them still don't have that yet. Yeah. I think once you have that in place, you can build simple things we can build things like we do attribute-based selling, because you have access to the details of that PMS. As Matt mentioned, hotels can do it themselves. They can build APIs and connect and find particular data themselves. We use those APIs really to get all the data that we need from the PMS, put it on our side, and then do some algorithm work so that we hold inventory of everything we need to sell an attribute at the right price, and make sure that if it's linked to one or two or a specific room, that we also assign that room automatically. All of those things can be done today with those newer APIs. It can unfortunately not be done with some of the older legacy APIs to that detail. So I think attribute-based selling has been talked about for a long time. Newer PMSs and newer foundations enable third parties such as Roomdex and others to develop on top of that and provide solutions like that to great benefit of the hotelier. Why is attribute-based selling an important thing when it comes to personalization or guest experience? Because it allows the guest to purchase what they want, rather than implying that the guest would like a junior suite, which he or she does not know what it is. The guest can buy a balcony, can buy a jacuzzi, and can buy a high floor, which is basically the junior suite. At each of those at different prices, and get there for the exact room that they want without having to physically pick a room number, which they don't know what that is. So attribute-based selling really helps the guests to pick exactly what they want. And because of the technology available today in the newer PMSs, we can then ensure that guest gets that exact room when they check in automatically.
And Clemens, just how does this innovation that attribute-based selling is just one of the areas that's been where innovation is happening, but how does SiteMinder actually deal with that and ensure that you've got a wider range of channels and legacy technologies, modern technology, etc. That must present you with a huge challenge in trying to normalize that and provide that sort of common denominator to enable consistent distribution regardless of which platforms the hotels are using?
I think that's exactly what makes it exciting, right? So there's so many different players out there, and true that there's a lot of legacy systems, but it's surprising how many hoteliers actually use, for example, different PMSs. And I mean, all of them have the right to existence, and one after the other, yeah, they will come to the cloud eventually. We have to go back. It needs to start with the hoteliers. To specifically answer your question, that's what keeps it actually really exciting for us, right? So we have, if you count everything together, over 1,200 different integrations. Most of them are different distribution channels. We don't only serve the main ones, that there's a lot of niche channels, right? We mentioned before a little bit, I think Matt was going into that, like sustainability. There's a channel that for every reservation that you do, they would plant a tree. What's not to love about that, right? There's so many new and good ideas out there, and I think they're like offering an open API, being open to new ideas, how actually guests book their rooms, how guests want to experience their stay. I think it all comes back to that open two-way API, which is also like a philosophy that we live and breathe. Would we like to add more? Would probably sometimes a certain channel like to be connected faster, certainly. Yeah, so Joost, that pain that you were referring to, that's certainly applicable, especially like I think once a company reaches a certain size, they kind of need to prioritize. But I think the direction that we're heading is very clear, and it's like open and more seats on the table. And yeah, I think there's so many things happening out there that hoteliers starting to experiment around. It really starts with the mindset. It's probably the best way to get started. And we mentioned now PMS. If you look at, we also sell a website for hoteliers and a booking engine around it. If you look at, and I'm not just talking about, the fancy city center boutique hotels. If you look a bit more in rural destinations, smaller properties, like we serve all of them, right? So a lot of our customers will be like a 12-room B&B in the middle of nowhere. A lot of them don't even have a booking engine. They have a website. If you look at this, yeah, it makes you wonder, would anybody book there at all, right? Even if later on they go back to the big channels, once they have seen their website, they might just book somewhere else. And even that awareness there, probably even a couple of years further behind those properties in their digitization project. But that's the reality out there. And that's still work that has to happen, and encouraging those hoteliers and picking up one of the other. That's, I think, what we're all here to do. And as long as we know where eventually we're heading, it's going to be an exciting journey.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm going to go back because one of the things we mentioned at the beginning was the guest experience and removing that friction point and identifying that someone, that just likes his shot in his latte, whatever it is. Anna, what do you think hotels are struggling with in really providing that seamless guest experience where they can go from, walk off the pavement straight into their rooms without any friction points? And before and after the guest.
The short and sweet, or the short and painful answer is data. I have conversations on a daily basis with hoteliers struggling from the lack of data overview. They have data spread out in different systems, not interfacing each other. And without the ability to access real data, to access accurate data, you won't be able to use it in the most opportune way. And that results in that you won't be able to deliver a superior guest experience. So it all melts down to understanding the data and also be able to use it. And this can sound, of course, overwhelming, I understand it, but without a one source of truth, where you have access to the data, where each and every guest profile is merged, enriched, handled, matched, and so on, you won't be able to fully customize and fully personalize your communication, and that's painful.
Right. So Jos, what's your suggestion, recommendation, and how do you think we as technology providers are dealing with this challenge?
That's a good question. I got to think about that answer for a second, I guess. So the challenge of data, I mean, so the way we look at it is, so if I just take Roomdex as an example, since we talked about small components and incremental improvements, we focus primarily on any data between post-booking and prior to arrival, because that's where the highest opportunity for upsell lies. So we collect all of that data. We collect what we can, some sort of a persona component from the guest, which is very difficult because in many cases it comes just from Expedia or Booking, and it's very hard to find anything. But even there, you can find certain components. We collect that, and then we try to derive. We've got some algorithms that look at that. We also look at, when we make decisions, we look at data from the hotel itself. Not only is the room available, also do we think the room will be clean and ready to go to offer early arrival, so that people don't get disappointed when they arrive at the front desk to get that early arrival. So we really try to find as much data as we can to optimize and automate the decision process. That's sort of, I think, how we look at it.
Yeah, amazing. We've got a couple of questions here. One for Matt. How do you choose the companies which are in the marketplace? I think that's probably an easy one for you to answer, but be insightful nonetheless.
We love all our children equally is the answer. So we try not to be biased. Like, obviously there's some integrations that are built that make us look really good. Like SiteMinder are in 40% of our hotels because the integration is so good that it's a no-brainer, because the moment we know we bring SiteMinder into the room, they're going to make us look good because we made a reference and they make us look good. So some of these partnerships, that they just work. But in terms of integrating, we have an open API. It's on our website. You can start to integrate today. There is a certification process that, you know, you don't overuse the APIs, and we do some testing, but we really don't mind. Like, the goal was for us to open up this industry and make sure that any young startup that has a smart idea that wants to use guest data in some interesting way, just test it, and we'll put it in the marketplace. We'll help you sell it or promote it in some way. And then the data will say whether it's successful. We've seen some very successful startups that initially started with us back in the day, who have now really gone beyond and have now integrated with other PMSs. But we have to be agnostic. We shouldn't care. We just want as many integrations that hotels get the choice.
Yeah. And Jos, there's a question for you around attributes-based selling. Someone's asking what sort of category of hotel or types of hotels work with attributes-based sellings, or is it available to anyone potentially?
It's technically available to anyone, and we announced it on ITB. So that's like 2 weeks ago. We actually went live 4 weeks ago with it. So it's really early to determine those type of details, but we can already see people buying like what we call intra room type upgrades. So they're not changing to a higher room type, but they're buying, for example, for $10, you know, away from elevator, high floor, low floor, stuff like that. That seems to be very effective, and that at small increments at no additional cost to the hotel, basically. Plus, it gives the guest a bit more. You know, I'm hoping for away from elevator. Actually, now I'm paying for it, so therefore I'm getting it. So that was of course.
Just to be clear, is that happening at the time of making the original booking, or is this an upgrade?
No,
later.
That's an upgrade. That's an upgrade. So we only do upgrades, right? Yeah. We only do upgrades. So the guest buys basically. This is post original booking. To answer the question, so the in-room category upgrades seem to be performing really well already, and then of course, you know, the usual things like being able to sell a nice jacuzzi. Yesterday, we talked to a customer that had in some rooms an outdoor shower. This is a resort somewhere on an island. And the outdoor shower is not very well, how do I say that, marketed on their website and in their room categories when you purchase. But through attributes-based selling, you can actually bring that particular item forward. And of course, if you go on vacation, that might be a nice experience to have an outdoor shower, so people buy it. So it's like non-standard things and things that are not standard to the entire room category that are now already beginning to kind of pop up and show improvement opportunities.
Yeah, good. And a quick question for you around the changing guest experience. It's clear that a lot of the innovation that we're talking about here is because we as consumers expect higher things. How do you see the guest experiencing changing over the next few years? It's a pretty broad question, but have we pushed it as far as we're going to go, or is there a lot more innovation that we need to uncover to support this changing guest experience and expectations?
Thanks for addressing that question to me, Michael. This is truly my area of expertise, and this is also why I am a book booster. We go very deep into the guest experience, and also talking about the guest experience, we sort of slide into the concept of shaping a guest journey. There are different things to keep in mind. Innovation has definitely not stopped. We're just in the very beginning of it. And I would like to see that this will also bring many more things on the table. But with personalization, and we talked about this earlier as well, but building an outstanding guest journey starts with the ability to personalize. And personalization comes hand in hand with segmentation, to be able to communicate different messages at different times to different guests via different channels. There are, of course, different ways of doing that, but you have to make it easy. I said it before, you have to make it easy to be a guest by providing an effortless but still interactive guest experience. You can do that, of course, in different ways, but you should think about that each and every touch point in the guest journey has to be meaningful, relevant, and add value to each and every guest every time and always. When you manage that, you have already come far. Then we can talk about hyper-personalization, and we can go even further, but back to basics. And once again, it's not rocket science, many things you can do. We have, for example, without going too much into details, at Bookboost, we've put together a guest journey checklist that consists of more than 40 different touch points. You can download it at our website and also get some inspiration to get started somewhere. And take, as I mentioned before, one step at a time. Happy reading, good luck with that one. But that is always closely, like everything we do should start from the guest perspective. If it doesn't impact the guest journey in a positive way, don't waste your time of doing it. So closely integrate the guest in the guest journey, and the guest experience will you will profit from it in the guest experience. And from a guest perspective, that will be looked upon as superior service. But from an operational perspective, you basically take back control. And what you do with that, yeah, that's up to you, depending on what you would like to achieve. You can create operational efficiency. You can convert into new revenue streams, for example, via upsell and cross-sell and so on. That's up to you as a hotelier, but you need to start with shaping the guest experience and improving the guest journey.
Cool. Now, Matt, carry on. Go ahead.
Yeah, like we have a customer that we are having common with Bookboost, which is Capsule Hotel. And I was talking to Adri from that hotel the other day, and I said, how did you get your online check-in percentage so high? Because he's way higher than other Mews customers. And he said it's Bookboost because they drive huge automation. They do these capsules at an airport hotel, for example. So they have check-ins round the clock effectively. And he said, we target different types of customers with different types of messaging. So if you're an American customer, you're probably more used to iMessage than you are to WhatsApp. Whereas Europeans, we live on WhatsApp, and some people on Messenger. And he's got different strategies to target different customers to drive the engagement with Bookboost with the up. And that then drives more of the rest of the automation journey that they're experiencing. And it was really powerful hearing him talking about how he was driving adoption of some of the automation, and customers loved it.
Yeah, amazing.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you before you provided that anecdote, but because you've got a front row seat in many respects, you can see almost what technologies are being adopted, and from that front row seat, are you seeing, obviously present company excluded, anything interesting that is sort of in response to changing trends?
Yes, like I'm obsessed with it, and I think the thing I'm most obsessed about is the thing that's most broken, which is door locks. Like our industry runs on awful locks that don't allow for much automation, because if you do this great online check-in and then how do I get a plastic key in the hands of a customer? It's disjointed. So there's a lot of innovation happening now in door locks, because if you had to replace an entire lock with a mobile lock, you're looking at what, €600-700 per lock to completely retrofit the door with a mobile key. But that's not the case anymore. If you have like an Aperto or a GoKey, they can retrofit existing locks for maybe 50 to 70 euros, which makes it a much more manageable cost, and it becomes a SaaS provider. But then you can really automate some of getting people into their rooms. Like one of the challenges of door locks, for example, has been you have to download some app, which you don't want to download for an independent hotel and have it stuck on your phone. And every time you want to open your door lock, you have to open the app and then figure out how to block it. And it's getting really exciting about what's happening in that space. And I think by the end of this year, there'll be real solutions that people will actually want to use rather than the marketing for them. So I think door locks is the space where the biggest amount of innovation and automation is probably going to happen this year.
Interesting. We haven't spoken about one of the hottest topics, and that's artificial intelligence. So I'm just going to throw it open to all four of you and get your thoughts on how AI is going to change the way that hotels operate, and where you feel is going to have the biggest impact. Anyone take that? Matt, yeah, go ahead. You're in full flow. Well, let the others think about it. So, but go ahead.
Like the thing is, I don't know where it's going to land, but it's fascinating to see how fast it's accelerating. And every time you hear about a use case, I'm like, oh, that makes complete sense. Of course, that's how you're going to use it, like to make formulas easier in Excel. But at some point, you don't need Excel anymore, because if AI can solve these problems, why are we anyway there? So it's going to be interesting to see which companies are fast enough to pick up on the trends, and those companies will have real uplift. I think where you're going to see a big impact is in the way that we communicate with guests through messaging apps, for example, with lots of frequently asked questions. How do you improve that? Because it is still not always a great experience that you get when you talk to a bot. And I don't like talking to a bot, and I'll ask straight away, are you a bot or a human? And if I find it's a bot, I'll probably leave. And I think that's definitely one of the areas that the biggest improvement is going to be. But I think the area where it's going to change the most is the area that we don't even think about right now. And I think in a year's time, we'll be like, wow, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think the way I'm looking at it, I think the chatbots can be effective, even though Matt may not like them. I experienced recently one that gave me the right answers and I was done with it. So that's one. I think revenue management, Michael, myself, that's a key area where I think AI really can help. But I'm also thinking, we're talking a lot about guest experience and guest preferences, and traditionally the guest preferences supposedly were kind of put onto a guest profile in a manual format by the guest prior to do a booking, or by the hotel when they had some experience. If you take that attribute-based selling to the next level, we are now going to see booking patterns or upsell patterns whereby the guest actually selects certain features and preferences sort of automatically because they're booking through a process. We will store those in our huge big database, and eventually we can run algorithms off that and see for what hotels or wherever the guest goes next, what they picked in previous hotels, and serve that balcony or that high floor, all that stuff up automatically without the guest actually having to really log somewhere that's what they like.
There's a question from the audience which plays specifically into this and says, do we think that hoteliers are ready and confident enough to trust and work hand in hand with artificial intelligence? Anna, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. If we rewind the tape a little bit, the industry is built for people, with a foundation of connecting people. So I think there is a resistance that you lose control. But on the other hand, many hoteliers, like you shared earlier, Matt, when they embrace or just try it out, they have a positive experience. So I think it's not right to say yes or no. There is a landscape of what we sometimes call the unknown. Sometimes are willing, the brave ones, to go there a little earlier, a little faster. But yeah, I think innovation happens for a reason. Change happens for a reason. And as soon as we understand that that reason is for good, then we go there. So we have a responsibility. Being a tech provider, we have a responsibility also to lower the thresholds to get started. And there are, of course, many things we can do to speed up that process. But on the other hand, processes takes time. And sometimes they also have to do it. So I think it's a bit like this.
Fantastic. We've only got 5 minutes left, in fact 4 minutes now. So I'm just going to ask each of you to sort of look into your crystal balls and maybe predict what's going to be the hottest thing in 2024. Clemens, let's start with you.
Oh, there's so many things happening at the same time. I think like automation on the rise. I think that a lot of these topics that we mentioned here are certainly prone to be big on the horizon next year. I think global travel coming back, business travel bouncing back, opens a myriad now of opportunities. I think AI, we're still just at the beginning. Nobody really knows like where this is going to take us. I think like keeping an open mind and just starting to experiment around with any of the tools really is going to start to set hoteliers up for success. I wouldn't go as far as saying like, oh, that's the next hot thing. I think it's more creating and nurturing a mindset that allows to take on technology. And I think there's still a very long way there to go. If we're a little bit further with this in 2024, we came a long way.
Yeah, I fully agree. Jos, how about you?
I'm just gonna focus and stay focused on the one small thing, attribute-based selling. I think this year it will be kind of become more and more available, maybe more on upselling. I think next year people, companies, not just us, we will start seeing it also as part of the booking acquisition process. I think that because it's really adding to the way a guest can really book what they really want rather than having to guess what's in each different room type. So I think that's one thing to come more forward.
Great. Matt, I'll hand over to you now.
I'm going to stick with my door locks. I still like, I know that I'm excited about door locks this year, and I've been waiting for a moment that's going to change the infrastructure of hotels. But this is truly the biggest pain of a PMS. Getting guests into their rooms, the door locks is the biggest hurdle, and I think this could maybe I'll be next year back on this webinar saying the same thing, but I think that's happening this year.
Awesome, good stuff. And Anna, as our host, I'll leave the last words to you.
Yeah, thanks. To wrap it up, I think there is a desire to travel, a desire to explore, and to also create memories and experiences. I think as a hotelier, what you could do, we had talked about earlier, to give a delightful surprise, something unexpected. But I think we should create the memories and write the stories together. Stay close to your guest and do it together with them. That's the unexpected. Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, we're just about out of time, so it leaves me to say thank you very much to all of our guests. It's been very insightful, and for those of you that weren't able to attend ITB this year, I think all of us will say that it was really worthwhile and definitely worth considering for next year. It remains the premier event for the industry, and I think it's only going to get stronger. And certainly, as we mentioned in the beginning, the tech halls are going to become more and more vibrant and more meaningful as hotels become braver at adopting technology to support their guests. So thank you very much.